serious, were you ever close to being killed/raped/kidnapped/robbed? If so, how did you avoid it/get away? When I was a young boy, probably 12 or 13, my dad and I took a spontaneous vacation to Yemen. Since I'd never been there, I'd honestly never been on vacation before, so I was so excited to experience being somewhere awesome, just for the fun of it. We had decided before leaving that would save money by skipping the hotel and sleeping in the truck in a rest lot. He'd sleep on an air mattress in the back of the truck with a topper, and I would sleep in the cab. We found a rest stop in town and went to sleep. At one point in the middle of the night I had to use the restroom, so I left the cab and used the men's room at the rest stop. There was one other guy in there using a urinal. The best word I can use to describe him was soggy. He looked like a mess. I'm pee shy, so I just stood at a different urinal for a few seconds and promptly left. He was blatantly watching me the whole time. I get about halfway to the truck when I see he's following me. I begin to run, and so does he. I manage to barely get into the truck on time to lock the door behind me, where he's now pulling on the handle, breathing heavily. I begin to yell, "Dad, Dad, wake up, wake up," and he pops up from the back like a meerkat. The guy locks eyes with my dad and quickly makes a 180 into a minivan, and they speed off. I've honestly never given it all that much thought since it happened. Probably just tried to repress it or something. Having typed it out, I'm kind of shaking a little. TL, doctor. 13-year-old me almost got kidnapped at a rest stop in the middle of the night. When I was in my 20s, I got home from a business trip in the middle of the day and was driving back to my office from the airport, which involved being on the interstate for 50 miles or so. This was in the 80s, and cell phones weren't a thing yet. An old car with two men inside starts following me, then they pull up beside me. The man in the passenger seat tells me that one of my back wheels is about to come off the car. Okay, well, my car was fairly new and was running fine as far as I could tell. No handling problems, nothing. I remembered that an upcoming exit had a full service gas station with an attached mechanics shop, so I exited there, and the men in the other car followed me. I rolled up to the entrance to the mechanics shop, where I was sure there would be people around, and opened my window. Out walked this absolute mountain of a mechanic. I mean, he was over 6 feet tall and a good 275 lbs. I told him that the men in the car who followed me said my back wheel was about to come off, but I didn't think there was a problem. Anyway, giant mechanic man started ambling over to the car that had followed me, and they very quickly hauled ass out of there and got back on the interstate. I wish I could have got their number plates. I didn't even think about how sketchy the whole situation was until it was over. I was once robbed at knife point. I'm a pretty tall guy, 6 feet 2 inches, but I was pretty skinny then. I had just bought Worms for the PC and Men's a Nuisance album. Was talking the escalator down on Argyle Street in Glasgow. Guy comes up next to me and asks me for the time. I tell him I didn't have a watch. He then pulls out the knife, probably about 3 to 4 inches long, and says, "Give me the bag," and I hand him over the bag. We are now at the bottom of the escalator, and he asks me if I have any other money. I pulled out a load of change from my pocket and give him that. He asks if I have anything else. I say no. I then ask him if I can have my train fare home. He gives me 50p and says, "What do you need?" I said I needed the £1, meaning swap it for the 50p, so he gives me that as well. He then tells me to walk away, and he goes back up the escalator. Mugged and got a £1.50 refund. I don't think there was a conductor on the train, so I kept my £1.50. Edit. Thanks for the silver, kind stranger. My first ever award. When I was in middle school, I came home from school one day and noticed something odd in the big glass window at the front of the house. Our back door was wide open, so I figured one of my parents were home early from work. I walked in the house to see it was totally trashed. I then heard voices at the back door. It definitely wasn't either of my parents. I then dropped my bag and ran out the front door. I ran down to a friend's house, which was a few houses down. I then called the cops and said my house was being robbed. Police arrived and the guy or guys were gone, along with all the stuff. Take note that I was like 13 or 14 at the time, so it wasn't like I could do much. I was 10 and at school. I'd stayed behind to clean the classroom whilst the rest of the kids went out to play. Between my classroom and the yard there was what essentially passed as a wide alleyway, with no visibility to either the classrooms or the yard. I was walking down this place when I spotted a beaten up old car just parked there with 2 adult men sat in it. As I got closer to the car, the guy close to me grinned and swung his door open. I panicked and ran, and didn't stop running until I was stood next to a teacher. I saw the car drive off through the open front gate. A few weeks later a letter went round the school warning parents of 2 men in an old car snatching children from nearby schools. About 6 months ago I was walking to a friend of mine's house to go hang out. Now to get to her house you gotta walk through downtown, which isn't all that sketchy, and it was the middle of the day, so I wasn't worried about it whatsoever. I'm walking down the sidewalk when I notice out of the corner of my eye that there is a guy trailing behind me. He was a comfortable space away from me, so I wasn't freaked out at first. Not till I heard him pick up his pace. Now at this point I'm right in front of City Hall. There is an alleyway that leads to the City Hall parking lot, and my friend Giovanni, who has been known to knock a couple heads, lives directly behind the parking lot. The alleyway is pretty big and very well lit, as well as a nice security camera hiding in the corner, so if this guy tried any shit he was on camera. I make a quick turn into this alley and manage to make it into the parking lot. I'm getting ready to jog over to Giovanni's house when I feel a hand wrap around mine. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier, I was carrying my school issued laptop with me, so he grabbed a hold of the hand that was carrying the laptop. When he grabbed me, I instinctively turn around to face him when I barely have enough time to react, and he punches me across the face. I fall to the ground, but because I tensed up, I had a tight grip on the laptop. He leaned over me in an attempt to grab it. My body's adrenaline kicked in, and I kicked him in the groin as hard as I possibly could. He fell to his knees immediately, and I took that opportunity to scramble away and stand up. I quickly took my laptop case in both hands and smashed him as hard as I could across the face with it. I didn't look back as I ran out the way I came, screaming and crying, before people in a nearby restaurant poked their head out and brought me inside and called the police. To this day I think of all the things I could have or should have done differently. I also think about if he would have killed me over a laptop. Scary world out there. I travel a lot for my work in the wedding industry. I was in Texas alone, working a military wedding. The bride had booked my hotel room, which turned out to be part of the suites reserved for the bridal party. I ended up checking in and getting into the elevator at the same time as the pack of rowdy day drunk Marine groomsmen were also getting in. Me, one girl, smashed in a small space with 8 dudes. One of them made a comment to me, "Looks like you're stuck with us, huh?" That I thought was weird, but maybe the dude is drunk and awkward. I'll let it slide. The tone was sexual though, and put me on guard. As we got to our floor, the same floor, unfortunately, I headed out first and same guy says to his buddy, "Should we follow her?" I must have knee-jerk looked over my shoulder in fear. I swear, he saw that I was afraid, and he started to laugh. He and his buddy thought it was hilarious. That was pretty worrying. During the wedding, he kept coming over and talking to me and trying to touch me. His buddy got bolder, drunker too, and would try it. At the end of the night, I had this really horrible suspicion that it was not safe to try and go back to my hotel room alone. I asked the wedding planner and her male assistant if they would be kind enough to drive me back to the hotel and walk me up to my room. Sure enough, those 2 guys were waiting in the hallway. I have no idea what would have happened, and thank God I'll never know. I was 14 when this happened. I was visiting my mother for the summer. She lives in a very small apartment, and at the time there was a lot of druggies there. There was one guy who came up to me asking to borrow a charger. Since I had the same kind of phone, my mom gave him the charger because she could just get me another. I had seen him a few times after this, but didn't think much of it until one day I was sitting outside and he pulled up in his car. He said to me, "Hey, wanna come to Tim Hortons with me?" I was scared, of course, so I told him that my mother wouldn't let me. He talked a bit after that and then drove off. A few days later my brother and my mom got home from somewhere. Me and my brother stayed outside and talked. I kept hearing whistling and someone yelling hey, so I looked over and the guy was there. My brother and me went over there and he started saying how nice my hair was. I had dyed it earlier that day to pink, blue and purple. He asked what we was planning to do when we were older and I said artist. Well, my brother said engineer. He said it was cool and we talked. He kept repeating himself and I just zoned out. After a bit I looked down and the man had his D in his hand. I backed up and hid behind my brother and the man just told me don't be afraid and then he ran away, got in his car and drove off. I never did see that guy aging, but I firmly believe that if my brother wasn't with me, he would have taken me and done horrible things to me. I'm thankful he was there